Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should first offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremmost human being, unto Mother Sarasvati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Shinvatam Swakata Krishna,
Shinvatam Swakata Krishna,
Punya Shravana Kirtanaha, Punya Shravana
Kirtanaha,
Hridyantasto Hyabadrani, Virunoti Suhritsatam, Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, super soul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. Nashta prayeshu vadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. So we have a reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 18, text. So we said we were on 42, but 42 has no purport, so we're going to do 43, but I'll read 42. I'm going to read it on my phone because the print is so much easier. I hate they put foreign languages in italics, which makes it double hard to read. It's foreign and italics. So, okay, first we're going to do 42. I'll just read it. Navain Revir Naradevam Parakyam Samutam Arhasya Vipapabudhe Yate Jasad Durvishahena Gupta Vindanti Badrani Akutopibaya Prajaha. O my boy, your intelligence is immature, and therefore you have no knowledge that the king, who is the best amongst human beings, is as good as the personality of Godhead. He is never to be placed on an equal footing with common men. The citizens of the state live in prosperity, being protected by his unsurpassable prowess. So here's the verse we're going to focus on today. 43. Alakshamane, Nara, Deva, Namni, Alakshamane, Nara, Deva, Namni, Ratanga, Panav, Ayam, Anga, Lokaha, Ratanga, Panav, Ayam, Anga, Lokaha, Tada, Hi, Chora, Prachuro, Vinakshati, okay. Tadahi Chora Prachuro Vinakshati, Arakshamano, Vivarutavat, Shanat, Arakshamano, Vivarutavat, Shanat, Alakshamane Naradeva Namni, Ratanga Panav Ayamanga Lokaha, Tadahi Chora Prachuro Vinakshati, Arakshamano Vivaruta Vakshanat, Alakshamane Naradeva Namni, Ratanga Panav Ayamanga Lokaha, Tadahi Chora Prachuro Vinakshati, Arakshamano Vivaruta Vakshanat. Is that 2 times or 3 times? So long, it feels like 3, but I think it's 2. Should I do it one more, or do you want to go ahead? You ready to try?
Yeah.
Okay, go for it.
So would you go ahead?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, this one?
You can catch it. It doesn't have to be them first. If I caught it by surprise, you can.
Alakshamani Naradeva Namni, Ratanga Panavanyam Anga Lokaha, Tadahi Karu Prapachuro Vanakshanti, Arakshamano Van Krishnat
Alakshamana ne Naradeva Namni, Ratanga Panavayam Angaloka, Tadahi Chala Prachura Vinanshati, Arakshamano Vivavrut Shanat,
Alakshamane Narodeva Namni, Sangapana Paya Mangaloka, Tadahi charu prachuro vinachati Araksha mano viruta vachana
Alakshamani naradeva namni Rathanga pana vayamangalokaha Tada vichora prachuro vinakshati Arakshamano vivarutta vakshana
Alakshamane narodeva namni Radhanga manav ayam anga lokaha Adahi chora prachuro vivan shatyati Arakshamano vivarut avat kshanat
Okay, word meanings. First of all, before we do that, just notice, this is poetry, right? So in poetry, language is always very rich with synonyms. And in poetry, you pick words that go together out of the list of synonyms. So look at how many words repeat sounds. That's one of the ways rhyming in Sanskrit poetry, I don't know that much about it, but it doesn't always just rhyme in the end. And sometimes it doesn't rhyme in the end if it can't be made to, but there's rhymes within. Even anywhere in the word, sounds can be repeated, and that ties the verse together. It's very interesting, helps make it more beautiful. And also one reason for poetry's existence, besides to use language in a rich way and make it beautiful, helps us remember the verse. Because in the ancient times, they would memorize verses. So I mean, they would learn the whole thing by memorizing a verse. They didn't have paper. I mean, now we, if we can, we memorize a few verses, but, in the ancient times, that was how the whole thing was done. So it's very fascinating to look at. Okay, word meanings. Alakshamane. Being abolished. Naradeva. Monarchical. Namni. Of the name. Rata Angapano. The representative of the Lord. Ayam. This. Anga. Oh my boy. Lokaha. This world. Tada. He. Tadahi together. Sorry. At once. Chora. Thieves. Prachuraha. Too much. Vinakshati. Vanquishes. Arakshamanaha. Being not protected. Avivarutavat. Like lambs. Kshanat. At once. My dear boy, our translation purport by His Divine Grace is Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. My dear boy, the Lord, who carries the wheel of a chariot, is represented by the monarchical regime. And when this regime is abolished, the whole world becomes filled with thieves, who then at once vanquish the unprotected subjects like scattered lambs. Please repeat. My dear boy, the Lord, who carries the wheel of a chariot, is represented by the monarchical regime. And when this regime is abolished, the whole world becomes filled with thieves. And who then at once vanquish the unprotected subjects, like scattered lambs. Purport. According to Srimad Bhagavatam, the monarchical regime represents the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead. The king is said to be the representative of the absolute personality of Godhead because he is trained to acquire the qualities of God to protect the living beings. The battle of Kurukshetra was planned by the Lord to establish the real representative of the Lord, Maharaj Yudhishthira, an ideal king thoroughly trained by culture and devotional service with the martial spirit makes a perfect king. Such a personal monarchy is far better than the so-called democracy of no training and responsibility. The thieves and rogues of modern democracy seek election by misrepresentation of votes, and the successful rogues and thieves devour the massive population. One trained monarch is far better than hundreds of useless ministerial rogues, and it is hinted herein that by abolition of a monarchical regime like that of Maharaj Parikshit, the mass of people become open to many attacks of the age of Kali. They are never happy in an overly advertised form of democracy. The result of such a kingless administration is described in the following verses. So, Om Gyana Timirandasya Gyanam Jana Shalakaya Chakshura Unmilitam Dena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance. My spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. So, could make a whole class out of discussions of the political scene and tie it to every one of these sentences. I'm not really going to do that, though, because we do that. Basically, we kind of do that all day when we hear the news. Whenever we hear what's going on, we kind of do that. Anyways, you see all this. Kind of go over it briefly. I have a point to make after that, though. So one thing near the end here says, they are never happy in an overly advertised form of democracy. Actually, it's very interesting because this country is an overly advertised form of democracy. Not only is it advertised as ideal when it isn't, but it isn't even a democracy, it's a republic. And for some reason, they are preaching democracy all over the world, preaching to us that this is to kill kids grow up thinking this is a democracy. And they preach to the developing countries, you should be democracy. And all along, this is a republic, which is really strange. I don't really understand why they do this.
What's the difference between a democracy
A democracy is like a direct vote, and a republic, you vote for somebody to represent you and go vote. So that's what we do. We vote in representatives, and we trust that they are going to represent our interests, and they go there, and they use their judgment and their what do you call them? Those guys that influence them.
Lobbyists.
Lobbyists. They use their judgment and their lobbyists to come to conclusions of what to vote for. And this is our republic. And so it's certainly not ideal. It's not actually a democracy, strangely. Anyways, it's overly advertised as a democracy, which is very interesting. And it's not working that well. Democracy tends to not bring out the best. Maybe at first when things are still idealistic, but it tends to bring out one interest group versus another, and whoever has the most votes. So, and it tends to go down, 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 because it tends to go to more and more the lowest common denominator. So then you get thieves and rogues in, who make empty promises and so on. It's a whole story that we all know. Anything else I want to say about that? Let's see.
Prabhupada called democracy demon crazy.
Demon crazy. Yep. Demon crazy, because the demons, if you read the list of the demons, some devotees were so excited to say, Trump is the demon in the Bhagavad Gita. But everybody is. Almost, it's a thing. They're looking at, he's my enemy, I conquered, and so on. All this kind of thought to one degree or another. This goes on all the time. It might be subtle, it might be gross, it might be overt, or might be not so drastic as killing, but just winning the money or something. But it goes on all the time. Just because we have a president who epitomizes it in many ways that are visible doesn't mean that nobody else is also a demon, because it's demon crazy. It tends to produce the demon side of people. Everybody's a demon and a devotee in the age of Kali, and everybody's got the demon and the devotee inside, and sometimes the demon is the one that wins, and sometimes the devotee has some say-so, and so sometimes people are more or less good, and sometimes people are bad. So, anyways, we don't have the ideal. The ideal is a devotional king, a saintly king, somebody who is let's see. An ideal king thoroughly trained by culture and devotional service with the martial spirit makes a perfect king. So we don't have that. That's one of the things we're supposed to produce eventually, Varnashram. And I don't know if we're supposed to eventually produce that kind of king, or if that's in Kali Yuga, if that's really not ever going to happen, or eventually in a few generations it will. I don't know, but I have no idea what all is going to transpire in the future. But we're supposed to start producing people of quality like that. So we're supposed to start understanding it. So that's our task. So that's my Varnashram comment for this, because I want to go to something. So the previous verse says, the king who is the best amongst human beings is as good as the personality of Godhead. Where have we heard that phrase lately here? This is what I want to talk about. So in the last few days, we've been hearing that the spiritual master is as good as God, right? This expression. So I'm going to take off from here, from this. And it's in the previous verse, but also in this one, the martial spirit. Now, if we think about Prabhupada and how he taught us, the martial spirit is there. Now, Prabhupada was in a way, not only was he Guru Sadhu Shastra when he came, all in one person, but he was the whole Varna system in one person. Maybe not the Shudras, because I don't know if he had to be called upon to, but he had to do service too. He had to cook and clean and all that at first. So I guess, he had to be all of the Varnas. He had to be able to flow in all the Varnas. And he was, obviously his position as a spiritual master and such a great scholar, he was a Brahmana. But he also could act as a Kshatriya. Not that he went out with a sword, but his words were swords. And his spirit and the forcefulness of his personality was his sword. And so he was a fearless Kshatriya against, was it Nirvishesha Shunyavadi, impersonalism and voidism. He was had a fearless martial spirit against them. So he came to the West to fight. And we didn't even know how deeply we were entangled in impersonalism and voidism in the West. We didn't even know that it was impersonalism and voidism. And it's so deep in us, it's hard to root it all out. So it's an ongoing thing. And he was fearless confronting it. In fact, there's that story of in the early days that he was talking about against the Mayavadis, and the devotees were thinking, who are the Mayavadis? Why does he have such a grudge against the Mayavadis? And they didn't know why he didn't like the Mayavadis until they were exposed as Mayavadis, and one of them announced his philosophy. I think it was Kirtananda. And it was all New Agey kind of impersonalism, and I don't know if it was voidism, but it was all like we're one with the universe and all this. And Prabhupada sat and listened and got redder and redder in the face, and he said, "Are you done?" And then he started, he started fighting back with, I don't know what he said exactly, but I just know the story briefly. And everybody realized, we are the Mayavadis. So the Western thinking is very Mayavadi in all kinds of different sneaky ways. So we have to root that out. It's a big anartas, or many, many small anartas, a whole complex of anartas within us. We have to root that out. It's an ongoing process. So part of the process is to be able to fight it. So nowadays, we have what we've termed quote wars going on. We have different factions who some say have deviated and some say you're deviant, and so they fight over who's the deviant and who is the offender and who is not. And they have these what they call quote wars. So what I'm going to say, I don't know if it's going to take a long time or if we get a short class today, but I'm recommending quote wars. I'm recommending that we become so good at it that we can defeat by quotes, and we should not step back. When did Prabhupada say, I don't want to always trade quotes with the Mayavadis? When did he say that? No, he would smash them and be happy about it. So he would out-quote them and out-argue them. So why should we not do that. Why, if there are different strains of thought going on in ISKCON, let the best quotes win. You know, we should become so expert that we can defeat anybody who takes a section of Prabhupada's quotes and makes a whole philosophy out of that and ignores the other quotes. We should be able to not just take the other quotes and fight back and split Prabhupada like that, but we should be able to tie it all together and prove the conclusion. We should become so expert. So this is, if we're Prabhupada's followers, we have to be ready. We never know when it's going to hit us in the face. Somebody's going to say something that they are going to say is real Prabhupada teaching, and you're going to know it's not true. So do we want to say, oh, we shouldn't have quote wars? Now, in a real war, in the martial spirit, in the Battle of Kurukshetra, nobody said, the enemy uses weapons, so we're not going to stoop to that and do like the enemy does. They don't say that. They use weapons better. So we should learn how to have a martial spirit, but effectively. We should not go into war if we're not ready, if we don't know how. We should be careful about this and learn how. We should do a lot of study and so on. Because we can go in and just cause more offenses. If we're not prepared to defeat something, we can inspire somebody to say something. And I'm picturing a particular recent thing on the internet that was somebody, some group thing I'm following, because a lot of times they put out good things, but every once in a while they put out this, the soul came from a Brahmajyoti thing, and they have all these arguments all of a sudden that they put. And so I've taken to fighting it, because what they do is they take some of Prabhupada's quotes and they use this science called epistemology to select the quotes that are true. Epistemology is the study of the validity of knowledge. And for scholars, mundane scholars studying different branches of knowledge and so on, and different philosophies and everything, they, whatever they study, the most recent, the most frequent, there's different rules like that apparently. How you choose which is the conclusion that was meant to be. As if Prabhupada sometimes said things that we were not meant to believe. So we're not supposed to apply epistemology to these arguments. That science is wrongly applied here. Everything Prabhupada said is true. We may not understand it. So I challenge back and I say, just because we don't understand everything that Prabhupada said that seems contradictory doesn't mean that Prabhupada is narrow, and we have to go above him to Jiva Goswami to figure out what Prabhupada is supposed to be saying, because he can't differ from the previous acharyas. So therefore we can figure it out by our own scholarship, what Prabhupada wants us to believe and what he doesn't want us to believe of what he says. I mean, or is he confused or what? Or is it, sometimes they say it's a preaching strategy. Why is it a preaching strategy to tell us something wrong? So everything Prabhupada said is true. It may appear to contradict. It's our brains that are too narrow, not Prabhupada's. So we have to be able to identify when this stuff is going on, and we have to be able to, well, we either have to leave the scene if we're not capable of this battle, so we won't just cause more bloodshed, namely our own, and Prabhupada to be offended more. But if we can't just let these guys run the show either. We can't just let them get away, because innocent people are following these arguments too. Myself, I was influenced. Well, many years ago, I also thought the soul came from the Brahmajyoti, because I thought I saw this evidence on these quotes and everything. And after time passed, I saw actually there's other quotes, I began to realize there's other quotes too that say different. And then I ran across a way to tie it together. So now I understand that everything Prabhupada said was just different ways of explaining parts of this whole picture. So we cannot just take Prabhupada and apply epistemology. We have to be able to fight that kind of wrong thinking. I'm not saying fight and win about where the soul came from, that too, but fight this tendency to be impersonal toward Prabhupada. Because it's like to take him like as a bundle of scholarly stuff to sort through, instead of a person who could see Krishna every minute and is trying in different ways to show us how to see Krishna. So we have to understand, and Prabhupada's fighting spirit, we have to learn that. We have to learn how to do that. And sometimes it's a matter of exposing somebody else's cheating. So they're saying, you have to use epistemology. They're saying, well, you can't reconcile these contradictions that Prabhupada says, so you have to be able to choose which is true. And how do we know? Well, we have to go back and study Jiva Goswami. So in other words, jumping over Prabhupada to study Jiva Goswami, as if we're some kind of experts able to do this, and thereby see Prabhupada through the lens of Jiva Goswami. Actually, we're supposed to see Jiva Goswami through the lens of Prabhupada's teaching. Because the recent Acharya, the one that we are under, the one that we profess to follow, is the one who presents things in the way that we see everything previous to him through that lens. And this is what we have to do. We have to identify when somebody is trying to cheat and switch that, and then what they're doing is presenting themselves as scholars superior to Prabhupada. And they're not admitting it, but that's what they're doing. So we have to be able to identify that. So this kind of ties in with the whole seminar we've been having to understand Prabhupada correctly. And we have to understand his martial spirit. And we have to learn how, because even a person who's not really scholarly inclined and not good at slinging verses or something, might be confronted with this at any time. On the internet, you read it, somebody's going, all of a sudden they post this. And then you say, what do I do about this? Or, is this true? You know, and you get confused by it maybe. So we all have to, it's our responsibility to become able to, whether just in our mind or in confrontation, we have to be able to stand up to this, because we can't just let this stuff happen. We can't just allow Prabhupada to be misrepresented like this without putting up a better argument so that an innocent person following it doesn't get swept up in it like I did. Because what happened with me was I heard all this so-called like quotes that to support that the soul came from the Brahma Jyoti and that we never fell from the spiritual world. And so then I asked a senior devotee that I knew at that time for some way to defeat this. Because I thought that I'm supposed to defeat it, but I don't really know how, so I don't know the quotes to defeat it. And they just said, oh, it just means you have to throw out all of Prabhupada's books, 1/3 of Prabhupada's books. And that didn't help me. And so I thought, well, if they can't argue better than that, well, then maybe this is true. So I believed it for a while. And it looks like it. There's quotes that make it look like that's true. But I don't know if you want me to try to explain how it ties together, how my understanding. I think I did before. But that we never fell from the spiritual world, and that no one ever falls from the spiritual world, it says in the 3rd canto in the purport, or that we all came from the spiritual world because we chose and we fell down. Okay, so what it is that we have a constitutional position, and it's still there. It's just on hold. And there's no material time in the spiritual world. So though we didn't want to serve Krishna, and that desire made an expansion of ourselves, came here, that never knew Krishna's service, and is involved for eons in material time. None of that material time exists in the spiritual world. We're still there. We don't know it. So this is how it ties together, so that both kinds of quotes are true, both kinds of things Prabhupada said are true. But if we don't understand that picture, and I learned this from a devotee who posted it, he heard Prabhupada say it, and I don't know if it's recorded or not. But anyways, for me, it ties it together, or at least it shows that it's possible to tie it together, whether this person understands it completely correctly or not. It's possible that these things do not contradict each other. So Prabhupada never told untruths. He never had a preaching strategy of giving us fairy tales so that we would believe and come to Krishna, and therefore, it's not true. He told us the truth. But at different times, different audiences, different readiness, he told portions of it at a time. And we're supposed to understand the whole thing. So, with that, I'll stop here. So, yes.
Bhakti Prakash Maharaj also has a book, Speaking Strongly for Srila Prabhupada. So he encourages to say no this is not correct. And I've seen, the first time as a bhakta in Atlanta, the first time I saw someone do that, it was like, whoa. Somebody in class was saying something that was not correctly stated. I don't think it was their intention, but Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj said, no! It was like, whoa, what happened?
Yeah.
And it was like, that was incorrect. So we have to speak and say, that's not correct.
Yeah.
And we don't have to say,
every time you pause, the other hand goes up and I'm ready to...
I'm sorry.
Sorry. You done?
Yeah.
I mean to interrupt. Okay. Yes.
It's strong.
It can sort of be looked at like this, just like Sureshwar Prabhu put up the in the point of Varnashram, how he said in the beginning in '68, in those early years, he said, forget about Varnashram, because he wanted us, the beginners, to just concentrate on chanting and those things. And later on, when he was about to leave, or in the last few years, and he knew people were maturing and everything, then he brought up, like, this is important. So maybe there's also a thing like that. In the earlier times, maybe he simplified things, and then, I don't know, I'm just saying.
Yeah, but he did, it wasn't a contradiction like that, about this origin of the soul and parts, it's true both ways. But he talked about Varnashram right in the first canto. And in his books, he talks about Varnashram. Even when he was telling devotees, we don't worry about Varnashram. It's in the books. It's right in the first canto, and he brought it over. And it's in the Bhagavad Gita. It's all over the place when you get aware of it. It's all over. So he was saying, and that's true. It's true simultaneously. We should have Varnashram, and we don't have to worry about Varnashram. Are simultaneously true. And it's our brains that are narrow. We think, I got to choose. It's not Prabhupada's brain was narrow. So
couldn't you just chalk it up to Chincha Veda Veda Tattva?
Yes.
I mean, if you really have to choose something, can't you just say, it's inconceivable and my brain is so tiny that I can't figure that out and I'm not supposed to?
Well, we are eventually supposed to. You should understand that ultimately Varnashram is for the material world.
Varnashram, but I mean,
and
so analyzing where did the soul come from?
Oh, yeah.
That's
you could do that. You could just say, well, Prabhupada doesn't lie, and if Prabhupada said nobody ever falls from the spiritual world, and another way nobody ever falls is we choose. We don't fall. It's not like an accident. Because in many places where Prabhupada said, no, we chose. There's no Maya up there. There's no modes up there. Just a pure choice. And people will say, well, why do we none get scared? What if I choose it again? It's still a choice. We have responsibility. People are afraid of responsibility. One reason people are attracted to having at least a little bit of impersonalism in here is because of fear of responsibility. So Krishna's going to take care of me. He's going to make sure I never come back here. It wasn't my fault in the first place that I was here, so it's understandable. So I go back there, and Krishna will protect me. I'll never come back here. No, there's always responsibility. There's always free will, but there's a fear of that. So some people are attracted to the idea, but we never fell. Nobody ever falls from the spiritual world. Or maybe it's because our constitutional position, which Prabhupada keeps mentioning, is still there. We just have to get back to it. So could be either one. And Prabhupada, maybe all of it. Prabhupada had lots of reasons for saying different things, but he never lied, and he never contradicted himself really. So yes. No, behind, Katya.
Okay. So I wanted to ask, like you are saying that we should see our previous acharyas through Prabhupada.
We should say it again.
You said that we should see previous acharyas through Prabhupada and not the other way around. But for example, is it right that we can't get benefits from reading previous acharyas? For example, like Madhava Gita with the commentaries of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and Chakravarti Vishwanath Thakur, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that devotees, when they were making commentaries like purports for last cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam, they were using commentaries of previous acharyas, and it's like sometimes you can see that you can get benefits in better understanding of Prabhupada when you read previous commentaries. So, is it right that we should not read previous acharyas, or what's his answer?
It's not that we should not read them. In the beginning, probably we shouldn't. We should read Prabhupada's books first. But then Prabhupada's books, all of them are quoting, he uses material from the previous acharyas in his purports all the time. So nothing wrong with the previous acharyas are good, but they have write with a certain flavor. Prabhupada said, don't talk to my God brothers, because if they say anything different, it will create big confusion. So it's because of our narrow brains. It sounds like a contradiction. Or maybe they weren't pure devotees, maybe it would be a contradiction. It depends who you talk to. But reading previous acharyas should be done carefully, and what I do if I read something, then I read Prabhupada afterwards. So that it adds a little illustration, some details, some insights, then I check it out in Prabhupada, and then maybe I can see it there. Or maybe it all balances out. But it always comes back to Prabhupada. Now, Krishna Shah has his hand up.
Yes.
You had your hand up already?
Yeah, I've had my hand up since the
Oh,
beginning.
sorry. Narrow vision.
It's okay, whoever.
You were right.
Go ahead.
You were right at first, but I could see. Go ahead.
Well, you talked already anyways.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I just want to make a couple of distinctions. You know, this idea of quote wars and stuff like this, and cherry picking, which is often a quote or a phrase that's thrown around. We shouldn't cherry pick, and you know, we of course we should learn verses, and we should learn quotes from Srila Prabhupada and be able to use them effectively. And if you're going to use a verse effectively, you might be accused of cherry picking. But cherry picking, the idea of cherry picking is that you pick the cherries that you like and you leave the cherries that you don't like. So basically, anybody can accuse anybody else of cherry picking at any time. So we've got to understand the proper way to use references in an academic, logical way that is convincing, and also so there's a right and a wrong way to utilize quotes. You can take them out of context, you can misuse them. So to use them properly, we have to have a complete, full understanding of the teachings of Srila Prabhupada. The best way to do that is to have a complete, full understanding of Srila Prabhupada's teachings. And the way to do that is to read all of Srila Prabhupada's books. So if we're just going to scroll through Facebook and find quotes and save those quotes to some file or something and then bring them out later on, we're being really dangerous. You know, we basically have to have a comprehensive understanding of the philosophy ourselves, and then we can engage in discussions with people. And yes, sometimes we have to speak strongly in those discussions, but I really strongly encourage people, you know, or discourage them rather, from getting into quote unquote wars. You know, the whole idea of, especially on social media and the internet, you know, it's the default position to become a jerk, you know, for pretty much all people. Once we get behind a keyboard and there's this like impersonal way of electronically interacting with people, we just naturally become jerks, especially in the age of Kali Yuga. So it's not a great arena for really discussing the truth. It's just not. And yes, there's always going to be some nonsense said, and sometimes we just got to restrain ourselves from even paying attention. And you know, I really think a lot of the problems within our movement at the moment could be mitigated greatly by spending less time on the Facebooks and more time with Prabhupada's books. And one other thing that I'll say in this regard is just that yeah, we've got to speak strongly, but we choose our battles wisely, and for the most part, we should engage with one another, including devotees who we may disagree with. We should engage with one another in loving exchanges, even if we disagree. If somebody says something that may be inaccurate, it doesn't mean we have to beat them over the head with quotes or start yelling at them or screaming at them or typing in all caps online. You know, we should nicely engage, and if they're not willing to engage in a nice discussion, then we should probably just disconnect from that discussion, you know, because otherwise we're going to risk committing Vaishnava-priya. So anyway, that's all I got to say.
Yeah. And if we're going to have a quote where we should encompass both sides of quotes, because otherwise what are we doing, dividing Prabhupada?
Well, I would discourage us from having quote wars. We can
Well,
have discussions in which quotes are used.
But they just call it a quote war anytime they want to. So sometimes we have a discussion and somebody calls it a quote war.
It's a description of a certain type of discussion. It's not really conducive for learning. So we should not try to engage in those types of things. We should try to engage in nice, dialectical conversations with one another. That's my opinion.
So, there's a few things. There's also where Prabhupada said that we should be practicing to be second-class devotees. First-class devotee sees everyone as a devotee, except for himself or herself. Second class distinguishes between the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the devotees, the innocent, and the demons. And we asked Prabhupada in Atlanta, we sent him a letter and asked him how do you tell between the innocent. He said, he said, with the innocent, you should preach to them. With the demons, you should avoid them. So, how do you know? And he said, an innocent person, when you're speaking to them, you can see that they're actually listening, and then they ask a question based on what you just said. A non-innocent person, someone who is challenging, then they're not listening to what you're saying and going to ask you a question based on what you said. They're not considering your point. They're thinking in their mind, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one reaches the Father save through me. They're just going to come out with their side, and there's no discussion. Mm-hmm. So, at that point, then you have to have the intelligence to distinguish: am I talking to someone that actually is interested and innocent and actually wants to learn something, or they just have their point of view and that's the only point of view that matters? And that point of view is contrary to our Siddhanta. Mm-hmm. The second thing is what Katya mentioned about in the 11th and 12th canto, where they're referring to Vishwanath Chakravarti and Sridhar Swami. That's through the disciplic succession of Srila Prabhupada, because they're serving at the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada, representing him. So then, therefore, they're supposed to be, as Sureshwar was mentioning, your Diksha Guru is supposed to be at the lotus feet of the founder Acharya, and they say that in the beginning of the 11th and 12th canto. They even, they say that we are translating as his representatives and praying to be empowered by him, like that.
And
so
based on much study of Prabhupada.
Right, exactly. And the other thing is sometimes Prabhupada said that his disciples he said this in a letter, he said that we're over-intelligent. We overanalyze things. And so that is a problem. And this is a case of that, I think. What was it? Let me ask you. Remember about 2 weeks ago I read a verse in Purport that answered this question? Do you remember where that was? It was
Answer which question?
This one about where they came, where we came.
Origin of the soul?
Yeah, I read it to you. right at the end of the class.
Oh,
Was it in a separate book or the same?
I might have wrote it down somewhere.
Well, it's on our YouTube. It was at the end, but I think somebody turned it off before I was finished, so I don't know if it was that part was part of the class. For some reason, someone keeps unplugging the end of the classes.
Oh, they edit it sometimes too.
Yeah, they just took out at least 10 minutes at the end of several of my classes at the end. Anyway, so that I can't remember where that was, but that verse in Purport described this whole issue. It was resolved. We resolved it. You don't remember this?
I think I remember, but I don't remember the specific. I don't remember exactly what it was or how it resolved it. I remember that this happened. I remember that I wasn't totally like, this is it, because I know a lot of verses, but it was something. It was something, but I wasn't totally convinced it was it. But it was right, somebody...
Oh, I remember you saying, yeah, this is it.
Okay, I don't remember. Somebody, a few months ago, posted a quote from Prabhupada's address on the holy name, saying, we're originally Krishna conscious entities. And so he said, that settles it. And about 1,000 comments later, it still was, it's still going on. It was a fighting, but I believe that I believe that if we get ready, we should make a presence with the other side of the quotes at least, but not just the other side, but somehow whole vision, because otherwise there's an audience online.
I think it's a waste of time.
No, I don't. I think there's an audience online. Somebody hears and might see that other side. Might help somebody. I've had people, little voices speak up and say thank you for saying that. So I think that it's, but you only if you're just at least make the statement. Otherwise, I'm thinking about like unfriending myself from that whole line. But at the same time, I'm thinking somebody's got to say this other side too. So, but only if you're ready for the fight. Everybody isn't going to go to war if there's a war.
Where is it?
118:22.
Where you found it?
I think that's what it was. I think it was. Yeah, I think it was.
1:18:22.
Yeah.
It was the long purport. Is it the long purport? And by the way, everybody's left. So,
Yeah.
but I'm not giving the class tomorrow. Jess is giving a report,
Oh, okay.
President.
and then I'll give class Thursday.
Yes.
But everybody's already left. So.
1:18:22, right in our chapter. Same chapter we're in?
Was it 18:22?
I don't know. I don't remember. I can't tell.
Okay, we'll find it.
Was it verse or purport?
It was the whole purport. It was like a 2-page purport. And everything in the purport stated that, we came from the spiritual world. I've never seen anywhere where Prabhupada said we came from the Brahma-jyoti. I've never seen anything anywhere that says that Prabhupada said that we fell from the Brahma-jyoti. Only in a personalist who in this life is practicing some type of impersonal yoga, then merges into the Brahma-jyoti and then falls back down.
Right,
That is the only place I've ever seen that.
There is a statement in the Jaya Vijay story where Prabhupada said, no one ever falls from Vaikuntha. But then nobody falls because there's nothing to trip. It's not an accident. So nobody falls. People choose to leave it.
We choose to go.
Yeah, nobody falls.
We have a choice.
Yeah.
That's love.
So
Love
Jaya
means free
Vijay
will.
did not choose to go. They got cursed and had to go
It's
because
a
they made a mistake.
pastime. It's
Yeah.
a pastime.
I know, that's what I
They're
mean.
being
I think
sent
that's
down there.
the distinction he was making. That it was for a
See,
pastime.
this is over-intelligence.
What
This
is
is
it,
over-analyzation.
I mean, there, not us.
Yes.
Not what we're doing.
But from their point of view,
Yes.
it's overly, and they're wanting to, because the whole point of
They
this
want to be more
is that,
intelligent.
no, but it also means that ultimately then, that Krishna himself is just part of the Brahma-jyoti. If you analyze it, that's the point is that Brahma-jyoti is just a temporary, we manifest occasionally as a person.
Yeah, it goes there, and it goes in Bhagavad Gita 4:10 in the purport. In the verse there's lust, fear, and anger, and in the purport it is explained. Lust is when you still think you can enjoy. Fear is when you discover it's all pain, and so you don't want to be a person anymore. And then anger is when you see too many opinions, and you get disgusted. You don't know what's right, so you take shelter of intoxication, which is back into lust. So by devotional service and transcendental knowledge, you come out of that. Prabhupada said about love for him. So this is fear. For some reason, there's a fear of surrender, a fear of personalism, and so they hang on to a certain amount of impersonalism.
Because it's painful. Our personalism that we are experiencing in this material world is painful.
Yes.
So when you tell somebody that you have a personality forever, they're afraid of that because everything that they have in this world is painful. It ends.
Yeah. Even when it's nice, you gotta.
Even when it's nice, if that's the worst
give
pain,
it up.
then it's over.
It's all.
And fear of surrender, too. I think that there's fear of surrender in this, too. So they have little ways. We don't really have to surrender all the way because it's another one they're saying. We're supposed to be not blind followers. But if you look up in the Bhagavad Gita verse that they were quoting about not being blind followers, it means you ask questions of the spiritual master, not that you blindly follow him. So now they are, this is another thing they're doing, they're saying, Prabhupada wanted his books to stand for all time. Conversations don't count, because he said different things in conversations, they say. And so...
Who's they?
These people who are, it's a really developed thing, this soul from the Brahma-jyoti thing. And because I was there, I read it because I was there, and I think of how to. I guess now I'm ready to think of how to defeat it. So because I was there, I'm angry about it. You know, I'm angry. Like Prabhupada was angry at the Mayavadis. I'm angry at this. So I read it and try to understand what their tricks are, I guess. So they're saying that if Prabhupada said something in conversation, it's not meant to last forever. So only when he writes in his book, no one ever falls from the spiritual world, that's supposed to last forever.
Okay,
so,
well then
so they're differentiating.
their conversation's not meant to last forever either.
No. That's
So
true, yeah.
so let's not listen to their conversation.
But they're influencing people. So I think that's important for you know,
If
be
the
ready.
conversation doesn't last forever, theirs doesn't either.
What if there's a young devotee who has questions and they influence them? Are we not ready to help that young devotee and to stand against his truth?
We can explain, but
Yeah, we have to be ready to do it well.
yeah.
Because the devotees were not ready to do it well for me. So I thought, well, these guys have better, they know what they're talking about, and ISKCON is being all vague and childish. You know, that's what they try to tell me to think. And so I believe it.
Issue? I mean, this has been going on for what, 25 years.
Obviously, it's still an issue then, and people are still influenced by it.
It's
There's
been
still
going
young
on-
people reading
It's
these
been going on
things.
longer than that. It's been going on for since way back in the it's probably going on for centuries. But
Right.
Yeah, centuries and
but
thousands.
I remember hearing it in the 70s, and it was defeated then.
And just because, I know people still pop up, just like Mayavadis. Should we give up just because there's always the devotees and the Mayavadis are never going to agree? Should we give up? No, we have to defeat them when they come in our face. And so this is something, if it's still going on, we should be able to defeat it. When Prabhupada said, don't fight about it, I don't know exactly what he meant, but even in that, crow and tell fruit thing, he gave answers. But people didn't understand it, so they were dividing up his quotes and fighting over them. And I don't think he wanted that.
Inside the movement.
Yeah, inside the movement.
With
People
what?
were dividing up Prabhupada's quotes and fighting over them.
What quote? What are you talking
The crow and towel fruit logic essay that Prabhupada wrote, a letter or essay or something, and he said, don't argue about these things. So ever after, devotees are saying, we can't talk about that. No, I don't think he means we can't, because there's no red lines in his books that says, this topic is off discussion limits, So we can talk about it, but we're not supposed to divide up Prabhupada's quotes and have a fight about it. It's all true. We just have to try to understand all of the things he said about it.
That's why Mother Carvalho said, and we've seen it again and again, is it our desires or what we deserve? It's both.
Yeah,
and so
so
many things are both.
Yeah.
And a lot of non-devotees will come to the movement and ask a question, well, what do you guys believe on this? Do you believe this or you believe that? And when you say it's both,
if somebody comes, a new devotee or a confused devotee or something comes and says, well, I think it's like this. And you say, you're not supposed to say that. You're not supposed to talk about that. Then they're going to say, okay, I will. Because they're not going to say, no, you can't stop a person from being interested in something just because you say, that's off limits. You have to actually be able to help.
I want to know who's editing the classes.
Who's editing the classes?
Yeah, why is it that the end of my classes are always
check
cut off?
Ostica and Jesse, probably.
Because at the end of that class, we read a purport and you were happy. You loved it. You thought, this is the end. This is the solution. I can't believe we're talking about it again, and you don't remember that. Unfortunately, I don't remember what it was.
I remember the event, but I didn't memorize the number or the words. Because
And then-
probably
and-
because I already agreed.
And then
with
someone
it.
cut it out of the class.
Oh, no.
I can't remember where I was reading. I'll look. I want to look at my research from that day.
Yeah.
And,
If I can think of a key word and type it in. And
It's just like Prabhupada said, the house is on fire. What does it matter where you came from? Get out of the house.
But it's not a non-part of our philosophy. It is in our philosophy, and Prabhupada says it again and again. He gives the answer.
I never heard Prabhupada say that we came from the Brahmacharya.
No, you didn't say that. So then we should be able to say, he didn't say that, we should be able to prove it. Because why
You
is...
need to prove it. Find the quote that Prabhupada said that, and then you prove it. The onus is on them,
Yeah,
not on us.
yeah. But they feel that they do, but then we have to say, well, that doesn't, I mean, what I'm saying is, what is a soul is part of our philosophy. Why not? Where does soul come from? It's part of our philosophy. But the way that's being thought about is not part of our philosophy.
Did you have something?
Yeah.
What?
Did you came in like you wanted to say something.
No, I want to listen what you're
Okay,
talking
no,
about.
I'm just saying that there's no place where Prabhupada ever said we came from the Brahmajyoti. So the onus is on them. But there is many places where he says that we were, we chose to come, to give up, we have free will, and we chose to act on that free will.
We have to find, like the quote you're talking about, and we have to find all the others. We really should gather all the quotes, including the ones they're using, and put them all together so one sees the whole picture.
Yeah, you can use many quotes for this. On some topic you can find all the quotes.
So we should work on that.
But actually, I wanted to ask one thing. You're saying after coming back to the spiritual world, we still can have fear that we will come again.
There's no reason to have fear.
Generally Prabhupada said you won't because you've already done it. But Prabhupada said you still have free will. So there is always a chance.
Oh.
And then but there's also the case of devotees who come to assist the Lord.
Yeah, this is different.
That's different. And that's the case of Jaya Vijaya. That is a special... Yeah, exactly.
But
that was the quote you were referring to, is the Jaya Vijaya one. And so that was a pastime.
There's also the Bhaktisiddhanta said we are like pencil rays of light. And then when we wake up and realize ourselves to be a person, a servant, we choose which world to go to. And it's like a 50-50, we're like in the Brahmajyoti forever and ever and ever, and this is what the idea is. And then one day we wake up and make a choice between the spiritual world and here. And they say that's what Bhaktisiddhanta was saying, but I think probably Bhaktisiddhanta was saying a certain part of something then, and not saying the whole thing, but they quote that and they say, well, Prabhupada can't disagree with the previous acharyas, so then they are analyzing the previous acharyas themselves without Prabhupada's help, and then analyzing Prabhupada accordingly, which is not the right way to do it.
Well, Prabhupada said if you read my spiritual master's books, you will not understand them. You have to understand them through the lens of me.
Yeah, so people are going independent. That's it. They're doing it in reverse.
They're jumping over.
They're doing it. They're understanding Prabhupada according to the previous acharyas, not otherwise. I don't remember, but years ago when this was really a thing in the 70s, there was a place, I can't remember where it was. It was just a one-line thing where Prabhupada says that we are qualitatively one with Krishna. That means Krishna, we have all the qualities of Krishna minutely. And Krishna is the supreme Ishvara. Occasionally, we want to act on that and know what it's like to be an Ishvara. And that is in a purport somewhere. I don't know exactly right at this moment. I found it, I've used it. Then that purport I read 2 weeks ago, and maybe it's still parts of it are at the end of the class and wasn't totally cut out. But I wish they'd stop cutting out my class because that purport resolved this whole issue. Sometimes the best part of the class is the last end of the discussion.
They cut out at least 10 minutes of my class.
More than once?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Have they done that to me too? Because
I don't know. I don't care about you. I just care about me.
Okay. This is running.
Huh?
This is running.
It's running. So